And the greater fool was Krilnik. He stayed behind and was hit by the mortar. I scraped him up with a spoon and buried him in a tin pot." The Prasad's imperial black eagles flinched when Yosef clenched his fist. He watched them and said, "Stupid Pole." "I thought you were a Pole," Kate said. "Yes, of course, but a Lithuanian Pole." "Ah, I see. I hadn't realized there was such a difference." "You needn't play dumb with me," Yosef said. "All the world knows there is." It pained her to think of the future he would inherit, even more to imagine the future he and other young soldiers, creations of the recent past, might construct. The tin roof vibrated in the buffeting wind, moaning like a violin, and her eye followed the noise down the length of the ward. Rubber hot water bottles hung from the rafters, and copper pots boiled atop the brick stoves. Once again they had a small supply of coal for the stoves. Like the armbands, it was an unexpected gift from an unexplained source, and on a brutally cold night like tonight, that would keep the patients alive. But the steam was melting ice that had formed on the ceiling, and she would have to push beds aside to keep patients dry. She was about to go when Yosef pinched her sleeve between his bony fingers, not wanting to be left alone. She couldn't blame him. A line of folded-over mattresses and piled clean linens stretched into the darkness beyond the few other patients on the ward, all of whom were sleeping, and the lack of human voices made their presence seem an oddity. But she couldn't stay. She was tired. She had other patients to attend to. She was afraid and didn't want her fear to show. The approach of Father Thomas spared her the embarrassment of pulling her arm free. Their other orderlies had either deserted or been moved north and west during the past months to staff new British hospitals along the fluctuating front. Victors in the recent war, the English now told the German army and its field hospitals what to do, but Father Thomas had argued that his throat wound should keep him behind. Not from fear, Kate knew. It was because he didn't want to abandon them. A hinged metal pipe inserted into a hole cut in his throat, held in place by surgical tape and a small paper disc, its opening covered by a square of sterile muslin. He would have looked ecclesiastical with all that white at his throat, even if he hadn't been a priest. He entered the circle of lamplight, air clicking and whistling through the pipe as he walked, and gestured that he'd watch over Yosef and move the beds. "Thank you," Kate said. "No," he signed. "Thank you." She looked puzzled, and he made the sign for a plate, breathing deeply in appreciation, his pipe whistling. "Ah, yes," she said, understanding. "Supper." The eggs were good, weren't they? She decided not to tell him that, lacking lard, she'd had to cook them in Vaseline. Their newfound supplies, though bountiful, were a bizarre mixture of the practical and the useless. As he bent over, his crucifix swung free, nearly striking Yosef's chin, and Yosef swatted it away. "Don't bless me, Father," he said. "I haven't sinned." He smiled with youthful pleasure at his joke. "Here, then," Father Thomas signed, removing his crucifix and giving it to Yosef. "Take this." "What? Why?" Kate translated his signs. "Those who feel they're without sin are in the greatest danger of all." Yosef made a face, but slipped the chain around his neck too quickly to be anything but pleased. Father Thomas folded his hand over Yosef's, and Kate squeezed Yosef's other hand before dropping it and hurrying off, briefly elated by her certainty that Yosef would be fine. But her own echoing footsteps down the long empty ward discomfited her. At least during the war she'd known what to hope for, and her fears, though deep, had been mostly dormant. They'd waited years for peace, and when it had finally come, they'd celebrated even in defeat. A last saved bottle of plum brandy, and yet now they were waiting once again, though she couldn't say with any certainty for what. Even before the armistice, they'd lived through outbreaks of civil war in Germany, Russia, Poland, and the Ukraine, and in the months since, they'd moved their hospital a half-dozen times to either escape